Welcome to Tell Us Something. Jerry Spencer first came to Montana in 1979 when he got a summer job as a desk clerk at a lodge in Glacier Park. That is where he met the love of his life and partner, Janet, who is also with us tonight. Jerry is a serial entrepreneur. He helped found KISS, which plays a role in this story. And Janet helped found Tidbits the Paper, which is currently published in over 180 locations. Jerry is managing a project to revitalize an old iron foundry in Indiana and splitting his time between Indiana and Montana. Please welcome Jerry Spencer.
So I didn't see that coming. A little bit of background. Before this story occurred, a friend of mine, Rick, used to work at Spring Meadow Resources and farm in the Dell. Worked with the residents there, and he enjoyed that. He got to help them out, and one of the residents was Ricky, and Ricky had some kind of an endowment or some extra money that allowed him to take events and to go to different places and do things. So Rick and Ricky went out quite often, and I saw them occasionally. I went with them a couple of times, and I got to know Ricky a little bit. He was really sharp and very witty. Just physically handicapped, was in a wheelchair. And pretty bad off that way, but real sharp and was good with his computers and sure enjoyed his gadgets. Ricky had a lot of gadgets. So back in the 90s, my partner Bill Crane and I started a company, Keep It Simple Systems that he mentioned, and we made solar power for portable computers. A whole lot of fun. We took the ride, I would say in early Silicon Valley. We went around and just had a heck of a time with solar power for portable computers. But a small company, just Bill and myself, and we hired 2 other people that did the computer consulting. So in 1994, August of 1994, we scraped together our nickels and barely made enough money and put it all into getting a booth at the Macworld Expo. At that time, it was a real big deal. We'd never been to one of these, and we couldn't afford to take a lot of people, so it was just Bill and I. And we showed up the day of the expo, and we went there, and our booth was in the back, and we didn't know what to expect. But boy, that thing started going, and the crowd was just crazy. It was just amazing. We just couldn't take a break. It was just nonstop, people coming up, and it was very exciting. And it was just Bill and I, so we're not going to see the show. We're not going to go to the workshops or any of that kind of stuff. We're just working our asses off. And went along for quite a while, and then I finally said, Bill, I got to take a break. So I went down, and I left him in the booth, and I went to the little commissary and got a little chicken Caesar salad in the plastic device and so forth. And I sat down at this table with a couple other fellas. We didn't say anything or anything. They got up and walked away after a little while. So I'm sitting there at the table by myself. And then came along a fellow pushing another guy in a wheelchair. It reminded me of Rick and Ricky. It was a very disabled fellow in a wheelchair with lots of neat gadgets hanging off the wheelchair, and his assistant, excuse me, is this table taken? No, go ahead and sit down. And now, I gotta admit that later, after thinking about this, I should have been in Montana mode. In Montana, somebody sits down at your table, you're gonna talk to them. You're gonna have a little bit of conversation and just, say hi, how you doing, what do you think of the show, or anything like that. But no, I was in big city mode. In big city, you can sit at the table, people come up, you don't even have to talk. You respect their space. So maybe that's what I was doing. I was giving them a chance to just eat their lunch in peace. And I ate my lunch in peace, and I shoveling stuff in my face, food in my face, and at one point I did look around the room, and kind of weird, it just seemed like everybody was looking at our table. Okay, that's fine. So I finished up my lunch. Just, kind of packed up and said pleasantries to the guys and walked away. And taking my thing over to the trash, and somebody comes up to me, man, well, how was that? What'd you guys talk about? What'd you do, man? And I said, what? What are you doing? I said, do you know who you were just having lunch with? That's Stephen Hawking. He's giving the keynote speech today. I didn't see that coming.
Susie Holt met the love of her life in New York City, but wasn't positive she was ready to spend her life with him when he returned from a trip around the world. He was a merchant seaman, and he wanted her to move to Montana. She also loved to travel and ran away from him to have her own adventure while she figured it out. After 4 months of hitchhiking across Europe in 1964, she got a little more of both than she bargained for. When she headed home, please welcome Susie Holt.
Well, I'm 22. I'm in Athens, Greece, and I'm ready to go home. So I booked a freighter, one of those that takes 12 passengers in first class cabins. It takes 10 to 12 days to cross the Atlantic. Only problem is not coming through for another month, and I'm really ready to go home. So I kept bugging the shipping agent. Can't you find something that's coming through sooner, please? And one day he said, yes, there's one stopping briefly in Crete, and it's leaving day after tomorrow, but that's okay, we'll fly you there, and you can catch it. So then here I am on the dock, next to this big, black, ugly freighter, but it's got Hellenic Star painted on the bow. It's the right ship, it's the right day, it's the right time. Where is anybody? Where are the other passengers? Who's going to take my ticket and show me where to go? But then a young seaman came by, headed for the ship, and he saw me, and he didn't speak English, but he came over and kind of like, can I help you? And so I handed him my ticket, and he kind of puzzled over it, and just, indicated I should wait, and he disappeared onto the ship. I'm waiting. He came back, gave me a smile, picked up my little red plastic suitcase, and led me up the wobbly gangplank into the ship, down a dark, narrow passage to a door that said, radio operator. So I go inside, and it's definitely not first class, but it's, it's compact, it has everything I need. Okay, this is fine. So I started putting my things away, and then I could feel that we were moving. I thought, oh man, I'm so excited, I'm going to sail across the Atlantic on a ship. And so I poked my head out, thinking I'd catch up with some other passengers. You're seeing this coming, aren't you? So silence, dark, nothing, no signs to show me where to go. So now I'm really confused, and I go back into the cabin and sit on the bunk and wonder what's next. And then Tasso, that's the name of that first young seaman, he came, knocked on the door, took me to the captain's office. Well, the captain's office is nice and spacious. It has a big oak desk and a short, boyish-looking man behind it. And he explains how surprised he is that I have a ticket on this freighter. He said, this freighter doesn't carry passengers. I'll be the only passenger. Not only that, this is an old World War II Liberty ship. Its top speed is 10 knots. We'll be a month going across. And we have one stop in Naples. I think, a month? Only passenger? And we're already out of sight of land. So that night I have dinner with the captain in his private dining room. And we shared some things about ourselves. He said this was his first trip across the Atlantic. He's 35 and not married, and he's been thinking about it, and he knew that it was destiny that put me on his ship out of nowhere to be his wife. Well, I don't love him. Marriage comes first, then comes love. But it was a good thing he felt that way, because the tall, dark, and very handsome first mate started putting moves on me right away. I said, no, I'm gonna wait till I'm married. He said, leaned over me and said, I can't wait 5 minutes. I can think of someone. I think the captain must have called him off because he didn't bother me like that again. So we pull into Naples, a very crowded port, ships from all over the world. And it's dirty and it's noisy. And the crew starts loading 6,000 tons of canned tomatoes into the boat. The captain takes me out into the city, though, and he takes me to a very elegant private dining hall. I'm feeling a little awkward. The best I have left is a very worn, faded, red, sleeveless shift and yellow rubber flip-flops. They were worn paper thin from hiking around. But he wasn't fazed. He said, really, it's so good to not have to pay for my companion in port. I knew I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, so he offered to buy one for me. I said, no, that's too much. He also knew I was an artist. He said, well, what if I set up a room for you to paint? You know, we'll fix everything you need to do a painting and we can trade. Okay, that's good. So we sailed out of Naples through the Strait of Gibraltar out to the open ocean. We're going to be there 3 weeks. But I needn't have worried because I was such a novelty, such a break in the monotony. They treated me like a pampered princess. I had the run of the ship. And I explored every inch of it, from bottom to top and from stem to stern. My favorite was up in the crow's nest. You may know that that's the very top of the ship. And from there you have a 360-degree view of the ocean out to the horizon. And it was just magic being up there, watching for ships or watching the luminescence in the water. Or it was especially magical at night in the moonlight. I spent a lot of time up there. Then those magical waves started messing with us, started tossing us around. And I thought it was very exciting. I ran down to the bow of the ship and going up and down with it, you know, and it just exhilarated by the spray of the waves that were crashing over the bow. The captain came down pretty quick and said that wasn't such a good idea. That evening at dinner, the storm was building up. Oh dear. And the plates on our dining table just flew off the table and smashed against the wall. That night, the storm really got going, and the creaks and groans of the ship were really freaking me out. So I went to find some, and I found them, the officers all huddled together in the wheelhouse at the helm, singing boisterously. And it made me think of Cub Scouts out in their first camping trip, you know, in the wild. So I knew this was bad, and I went back to my cabin and strapped my life preserver on over my clothes and lay down in my bunk and just held on to that life preserver, hoping the ship wouldn't break up. Well, it didn't. That bugs me. How am I going to finish? It didn't break up. I went down to my studio, and the paints had come unsealed and splashed over the walls. It was absolutely clean the next day, though. So then, I wanted to build a kite. I have to tell you about the kite. The captain and I built one, and it didn't fly. But the next day there was one flying, and the crew had made it, and it was octagonal, and it had 2 black circles with glasses and little nose, and 2 little ponytails like I was wearing. And the crew kept that flying for 2 weeks. So okay, we're coming up to the Atlantic coast, and we have to find our way up to New York, and in a fog with broken radar. But we make it, and the last night, the captain unlocks the beer, sends it down to the deck for the crew. The guitars come out, the bouzouki come out, the singing and dancing starts, and I can't resist. I head down to the deck, and I dance Greek style, into the wee hours, with the kite still flying. So, who could have expected any of that? But I still wondered if that shipping agent knew what he was setting me up for.
So, our next storyteller is me. We had a dropout, so I'm going to tell you my didn't see that coming story. My name is Mark Moss. Yeah, you didn't see that coming. My name is Mark Moss. I'm from Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, a little town right outside of Akron. I moved to Montana in 1997, ended up in Gardner in 1999, which is where this story starts. How many people have ever seen Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band? Yeah. So it is like a gospel revival, isn't it? He opens with a strong song, and it's a lot of celebration, and it's a party, and then he plays some of these songs that are a little more heartbreaking and a little more sort of working class, and maybe I'm not getting my dreams coming true anymore, and then he celebrates again, and it's a big party, and he's just celebrating the joy of rock and roll and of love and of sex. And it is incredible. Well, in 1984, Born in the USA came out, and I bought the tape, and I was 13. And we were in, I think, Atlantic City or Ocean City, Maryland, when he came through Cleveland, so we didn't get to see him. And then when I got back to Cleveland, the closest that he was coming was Pittsburgh, which wasn't that far away, but I'm 13. So I didn't get to go see him there, but in 1988, I saw him for the first time. And it was awesome, and I decided I was never gonna not see a Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band show again. And so I saw every single tour. Up until maybe a couple of years ago, I've seen every single tour. But in 1999, I was living in Gardner, Montana, and I didn't have a car. And Bruce Springsteen announced the reunion of the E Street Band, and they were gonna do a world tour. And the closest they were coming to Gardner was Fargo, North Dakota. But I bought tickets. I bought 4 tickets, and I had no one to go with. And I had no car and no way to get there. And so I go down to Red's Blue Goose Saloon, and I sit down, and Jay Todd pours me a beer. And I said, "Hey, Jay Todd, do you want to come with me to see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band in Fargo, North Dakota?" And he said, "Yes. How are we going to get there?" And I said, "We can take your car." And he says, "Have you seen my car?" He drove like a 1986 beat-up Subaru with 3 flat tires and maybe 1 turn that worked. And I said, "Okay, we can't take your car." And he said, "I'm not going. You should talk to John." John Dundy's sitting next to me. And I said, "John, you want to go to see Bruce Springsteen?" And he's like, "Who are you? Do you play bass?" I was like, "No." So John wasn't coming with me. So I have to go up the hill to Yellowstone National Park where I worked. And I'm asking everybody I know, and I finally find a guy with a truck who's willing to drive to Fargo, North Dakota if I give him the tickets. So I have to give him the tickets, and I do. And it's Mark Beal and Carrie Gunther and Carrie's girlfriend at the time, Christy. And so it's Mark's truck. Carrie and Christy sit in the front. There's only 2 seats. And so Mark and I have to ride in the back, in the bed of the pickup truck. There's a topper that doesn't have really good seals on the windows. It's also November. So we pile all these blankets into the back of the truck, and Mark and I get in the bed. Carrie's driving. I can't remember how many hours it is to Fargo. It's like 9 or 10 hours. It's crazy. But it's cold, and it's jangling around. You can't hear each other really well, and we don't have cell phones in 1999. And so there's nothing to do. We didn't bring any books. So we do as best we can trying to sleep. And we fail a lot at that. But finally we get to Fargo. And we get something to eat. I can't remember what we had, some diner, greasy spoon food. And then we get into the venue, and we had the nosebleed seats way up at the top. And the nosebleeds, for those of you who don't know, are the cheap seats. And they're so high up in the arena that you might get a nosebleed from the altitude. And so we're way up there, but I don't go to the seats right away. They go up to the seats. I get sucked into the merch table. And I'm looking, and I'm thinking about the cold ride back to Montana. And so I'm looking at the hoodies, but they're $90. And I'm looking in my wallet. I don't have any credit cards, and I'm looking through my wallet, how much money I have to get home, but also how much money do I have to spend here at the merch table. I'm not going to get a poster because that's going to bend. I'm not going to get, so anyway, I get a keychain. And I'm trucking back up to the seats, and I get to the seats, and nobody is looking at me. Mark and Christy and Carrie are all just looking straight ahead. And I sit down, and I say, hey, y'all, what's going on? And they don't look at me. And there's a guy sitting behind us. He's like 9 feet tall, and he's got like a black suit with a black shirt that's buttoned to the top and creases that you could cut diamonds with. I mean, the creases in his pants were just... And so I turn around and I said, what's going on? He says, don't look at me. I said, okay. And he says, do you want to move to the front? And I said, yeah, what's that going to cost? He said, please don't look at me. I said, okay. So, what's that going to cost? And there are these people walking up the steps off to the left. And he shouts at them, stop following me! And they sit in their seats. They don't even look at their tickets and see if they're the right seats. They sit in their seats and they say, we're not following you! Well, they knew something that we didn't know, and that is this guy behind us works for Bruce Springsteen. But we didn't know that. He's a stranger to us. And he says, do you want to move to the front? Yes, we do. He says, give me your tickets. So we give him our tickets. This is a stranger. And he gives us new tickets that haven't been torn. Which, I'm like, are these fraudulent? What is this? And then he says, here's a wristband. Don't lose it. Don't sell it. You need it to get to your seats. And he puts it on our wrists. And I turn around to look at him, and he's like, disappeared into the ether. He's gone. Okay, so we go down to the usher, and I'm going, oh, I hope these are legit. And so we get to the usher, and she tears our tickets, and she says, these are good seats. And so I was like, great. And so she sends us down to the next usher. And the next usher looks at our tickets and says, these are great seats. And sends us down to the next usher who like pulls a velvet rope out and ushers us to the front row. Yeah. And it's like, what? And we're looking at each other, and there's, by the way, so Mark and I are sitting over here. There's two other dudes in the middle that we've never seen before, also all in black and very serious looking. And then Carrie and Christy are sitting over here. For whatever reason, these guys had those seats. And we come to find out that they paid $800 for their seats at a charity auction. Because when Bruce goes to a town, he tries to give to some charity in some way. And apparently he had donated a bunch of tickets. And they bought them, and they were $800 a piece. And they were just pissed off that all these poor rednecks were coming down from the upper poor cheap seats, and they didn't have to pay any more than, face value. And so they're all just yelling at each other and not paying attention. But what's happening is we're watching everybody's like walking down from the cheap seats because we're not the only ones. And they're like confused, and as they realize what's happening, there's this moment of joy that just washes over their whole body. And then we start talking about, what's your favorite record? What's your favorite? Did you see him in Cleveland that one time? Oh yeah, I know, I saw him in Pittsburgh, and whatever. And we just formed this community, and it was incredible. And then Bruce comes on the stage, and he opens with the Ties That Bind, right off the river, and it's a party right from the beginning. And we're just, have you ever been to one of these? It's 3 hours long. It's a fucking ordeal. And it's a party, and we're dancing, and we're just soaked in sweat. And he leaves the stage, and he comes back for the encore, Thunder Road and Born to Run, And then he plays Hungry Heart, and then he plays like one of my favorite songs, Land of Hope and Dreams. This train carries saints and sinners. This train carries losers and winners. This train carries whores and gamblers. Everybody, get on board. And so we are on board. And they finish the show, and they come and they're slapping high fives, and I got to slap high fives with Bruce Springsteen and Clarence Clemens, and his hands are so fucking big. So the story really is about the experience of getting there, not about the show. I didn't see it coming. I couldn't have imagined. I don't remember getting home, and it wasn't because I was drinking. Thank you so much.